eQuez. Your quest for education starts here. Welcome to eQuez Audio.
Hello, everybody. I'm Margaret Feldman, the founder of eQuez, a platform that helps students discover careers, find best fit schools, and make smart choices about higher education. This is episode 10 of Inside with eQuez, where we take an inside look at the journeys and lives of students and professionals who are studying to enter or work in a particular career. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Rami Basatneh, a first-year podiatric surgery resident at the Detroit Medical Center. After listening to this episode, if podiatric medicine sounds interesting to you, visit eQuez.com, that's EQUEZ.com, to get connected to best fit podiatric medical schools. Dr. Rami Basatneh recently graduated from the Temple University School of Podiatric Medicine, where he served as a national delegate for the American Podiatric Medical Students Association during his 4 years there. He enjoys writing during his free time and is regularly published in Podiatry Today. Now, let's hear from Dr. Rami Basatneh. Dr. Rami, we're very excited to have you on our show, eQuez Audio, Inside with eQuez.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I know it's been a long day for you, so I appreciate you sticking it out till the end. Let's just get started here. So how did you first learn about the field of podiatry?
So that's kind of like a classical question that's asked to pretty much every podiatry student, just given how unique the field is. Mm-hmm. My story, I feel, is it's one of the main traditional tracks that you'll hear. Okay. I was actually enrolled in a master's program out in a DO school out in Yakima, Washington. Okay. The school was called PNWU, Pacific Northwest University. And the master's program was essentially designed to have students take courses alongside the medical students at the university. And one of the courses I was taking was called clinical skills. And essentially you learn how to do entire full body exams and things like that with the medical students. And when I got to the sports medicine section, sort of like the lower extremity exams, I found myself really fascinated with that. And my clinical instructor at the time said, "Hey, have you considered like podiatric surgery?" And I was like, "What's that?" Which also seems to be a cliche, epiphany that a lot of prospective podiatric medical students have. Right. And he was like, "Well, my best friend's a podiatric surgeon. You should shadow him." So that's when I shadowed him. And within the first day that I was shadowing him, I saw, an orthopedics case. I saw a vascular case. I saw a neurology case. I saw a foot drop. Mm-hmm. I saw a derm. I saw it all. And then that kind of was what, got my attention, and I was like, hey, this looks like it's the right specialty for me.
Okay, got it. And did you do any other shadowing experiences besides that first one?
Yeah, so I've shadowed a vascular surgeon before. Mm-hmm. My father's a neurologist, so I've been around his practice and I've seen what neurology is like. Okay. I've worked closely, kind of like volunteered around primary care physicians and things like that. So I've shadowed a couple of doctors, yeah.
Okay. And what really sort of made podiatry stand out as being the right choice for you amongst all the different things that you shadowed? So
for me, it was several things. Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, just how multifaceted it is. Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of individual that suffers from FOMO, fear of missing out. It's a really big thing in my life, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I feel like podiatric medicine has an advantage on traditional medical schools is that you don't have to kind of go through the first 4 years of medical school with the uncertainty of what am I going to specialize in. Mm-hmm. Podiatric medical school is a specialized track from the get-go. You're doing 4 years of medical schooling, but from the get-go that you're going to specialize in foot and ankle surgery. Mm-hmm. So that alleviates the uncertainty and the stress that comes with the uncertainty. And in addition to that, it also helps you hyper-focus from the get-go. So you're goal-oriented and you can focus on, the podiatric medical students are studying, AO techniques and surgery and all these things that, orthopedic surgeons and residents are only getting to know once they're in the second year of residency. Mm-hmm. So that attracted me a lot. And then the other thing for me was the cost of education, the cost of schooling is actually not much cheaper, but relatively cheaper to dental school and traditional medical school. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing, and this is sort of something that is not really well known until you join the profession, is how tight knit the profession is, and really how supportive its mentors and its the folks who have been in the field for a while are. They take you under their wing, and really, no matter what you need or what you want to ask for, they're there for you.
Right. That's good. That's important to have that support as you're just starting off your training.
Yeah.
So I know you said that podiatry is very multifaceted. Is there any particular area that you hope to specialize in, or are you not sure yet?
So the nice thing about podiatry is that even though the field does offer fellowships that can, take you further into a certain niche, like say sports medicine or limb salvage or pediatrics, you can still technically, and not only technically, but like traditionally work within those facets with just a 3-year podiatric surgical residency and without having to do the fellowships.
Yep.
So for me, my goal is to actually be able to be good at everything. Probably not the best, but be pretty good at everything.
Yeah.
And then if I were to pick a certain niche, I really like the idea of practice management. So I'd probably want to focus on that.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And do you think that there are any misconceptions that are out there about podiatry that may leave prospective students confused or potentially missing out because they maybe have the wrong idea of what it is?
Absolutely. That's actually a really great question. 100%. So I actually wrote a piece about this for Podiatry today, and I talked a little bit about it. There's somewhat of a false dichotomy that's created by, so I guess I got to take it back a step to kind of explain where my thought process is on this. So I truly believe that podiatry is the best kept secret in medicine. And the reason I say that is because, and this is just the reality of things, right now there really aren't much applicants. One of the things that podiatry, and this is just, I guess the genuine truth, one of the things that it's struggling in the field is student recruitment. For whatever reason it may be, I think it's twofold. One fold is a lack of awareness, amongst pre-med advisors, amongst students themselves, such as myself. I didn't even know about it until someone told me about it in person. And the other thing might be a little bit of a branding issue. And I think that branding issue really stems from this false dichotomy that I'm going to explain. And what it really is, an individual that's driven into the field of medicine is usually a very ambitious individual. So when they go into this field or when they're researching certain specialties and, they come across statistics that say, only this many people applied to podiatry school or to podiatric medical school this year, to them, that's from a branding perspective, that's being perceived as, well, it sounds like no one wants to do this. But really, it's just that the awareness is not where it needs to be. So folks are not rushing it like they should be, which is why I think it's the best kept secret in medicine. And I truly believe that over the years, as this will be more discovered in the near future, there will be somewhat of a gold rush. I want to say to podiatry, and people will start to realize, wow, how is this hidden, and how is this kind of a gem that was hidden and we didn't really know about until now? Yeah.
Right. Good to know. So you just completed podiatric medical school and now you're just starting your residency. So can you tell us a little bit more about your experience in podiatric medical school and what that was like and what your days were like?
Yeah. So I went to Temple University, School of Podiatric Medicine. And our first 2 years were essentially taking basic medical science courses, the same ones that are taught to the traditional MD students at Temple University. And your first 2 years are essentially what they sound like. You're just studying endlessly, taking exams. And then at the culmination of those 2 years is essentially the first part of boards, which is the APMLE Part 1 exam. Yep. My average day consisted of waking up early, going to class, and then, spending maybe 8 to 5, 8 to 3, something like that in class, depending on the day. And then after that, studying for about 2-3 hours, and then just trying to catch either some, like an hour-long activity, a hobby or something like that, and then just crashing.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's how it is for 2 years. And then third and fourth year, that's when things get real, and you're in clinic for the entire third year with a little bit of hospital rotations involved there. And then fourth year, you're on your externships, which essentially are the equivalent of what traditional medical students would call sub-Is. So it's where you go and spend a month at a program that you're interested in and rotate there and whatnot.
Okay. And which, out of all 4 years, which year was your favorite?
I would have to say my favorite year was third year. It's nice to be in clinic. It's sort of that limbo year where you don't have a board exam to worry about. You're also in clinic, you're learning, you feel official, you're treating patients. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what was the hardest part of podiatric medical school for you?
So the hardest part for me was more of a personal reason that it was hard, which was boards part one came or happened to come during the month of Ramadan. So I was fasting all day, and then I'd break my fast at sunset, and then I'd start studying, and then I'd study till sunrise, and then I just didn't have the energy to study when I was fasting. So that was my schedule, and I don't know how I survived that.
Yeah, that would be challenging. Do you have any advice for students that are starting podiatric medical school?
Absolutely. So my advice to them is, obviously focus on your grades, focus on, the journey ahead, the 4 years, but find a mentor, find someone who is willing to pay it forward. And there are many of those individuals in our profession,
right?
And have them just tell them what you're interested in, and they will guide you. I mean, so the degree of separation in our field is literally one. There's not it's not more than one.
Yeah.
So everyone knows someone. And if you're interested in, let's say, sports medicine, one of my best friends in podiatric medical school, he loves sports. That's why he went into podiatry. And his dream is to one day become a consultant podiatric surgeon for a sports team.
Okay.
So he found a mentor that, does that kind of stuff, and that took him under his wing and is teaching him, how to essentially rise in the ranks and do that sort of thing. And those examples, are endless with all different, facets of the profession.
Okay. And for students that are even earlier in the process, so they're just applying to podiatric medical school, do you have any advice for students who are at that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So my advice to prospective podiatric medical students is, again, one of the blessings of the profession is that you're specialized and you're goal oriented from the get-go. So if you really know this is what you want, obviously do what you got to do to get in. But even before you start, you can start orienting your goals from day one, before day one, really, of school. Look into different, I guess you could say, subspecialties within the field. See what interests you. You can start getting involved with research projects before you even start, because you're going to do podiatry, as opposed to in traditional medical school you could spend 4 years doing pediatrics research and then end up in geriatrics. What I mean? So yeah.
Okay, great. And so far in your path to podiatry, what has been your most memorable experience interacting with a patient?
Interacting with the patient. I just, let's see. I just remember when I was a student, there was this one patient where, and this is another thing that I really like about our profession, is that, there are very few specialties out there where a patient can walk in excruciating pain and just leave with that pain completely alleviated, because podiatry is very procedurally based, and you can kind of do something or offer something, a tangible healing touch, right there and then, and have the patient, coming in, limping and leaving, jumping essentially. So I remember there was a patient that came in, was in pain, and then just, doing what treating the pain in the clinic. The patient was as the patient was leaving the door, they were essentially singing, they were literally singing out loud, the hallways, and the attendings could hear the patient sing. It's what's going on there?
Yeah.
So it's a nice feeling to have as a student doctor, wow, I made that happen. That's cool.
Within one visit.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool. And I've heard that before. I've heard other podiatric physicians and surgeons say that same thing. So I think it definitely happens quite often. So you have just finished podiatric medical school. You're in your residency now. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what that transition was like?
Yeah. So right after match, things start to sort of sink in. You're like, okay, this is real. This is happening. I'm going to become a resident. Honestly, that gap between match and residency, you're mostly just like trying to mentally prepare for residency. And what that really consists of is just like chilling and like vacationing and doing everything you got to do to be like, zen right before. Exactly. And honestly, my recommendation to like fourth year students is like to totally do that. Like, don't, now is not the time to be like type A and be like, I need to get ready. Like, no, you do need to get ready. And the right way to get ready is to be psychologically prepared for, a day like today for me, which was from 5 a.m. to essentially like 9 p.m. Right. So yeah, that was kind of the transition. Just, I traveled, I had fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. So now that you are a resident, can you tell us a little bit about what your days look like now compared to medical school?
Yeah. So as a resident, it really depends. It varies from program to program what your typical day would look like. But on average, you're going to have surgical days. You're going to have days that you're more just doing floor work, rounding on patients. You're going to have days where you're in clinic, and then if you're on service. If you're off service, you're obviously going to be rotating through other services like general surgery, internal medicine, infectious disease, things like that. So yeah, it's just a mixed bag of those experiences, really.
Yeah, and some long days, it sounds like.
Exactly,
Yeah.
long days.
Okay. Yeah. And Dr. Rami, what are your future plans? I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but what do you sort of envision for yourself moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a little early to think about that. But I definitely do have certain ideas in mind. Something that I'd really like to do eventually is have that sort of wholesome practice, whatever that may mean, being able to treat a variety of patients, a variety of pathologies. And then I would like to get involved in leadership within our profession. One of my passions is student recruitment, and that's something that I've been working on since I joined podiatric medical school. So I'd like to see, what kind of an impact I can make on that front as a hopefully a leader in our profession at some point. Yeah.
And I think I know the answer to this, but I always ask it. Would you recommend the field of podiatry to other students?
Oh yeah. I mean, I recommend it every day to a lot of folks who reach out to me, and I've had prospective students reach out to me and say, I know this is what I want. How do I get in? What do you recommend? And I'll tell them, you got to do well on your interviews. You got to do well on your MCATs. You got to, make sure you really think and put some time into your personal statement. And then I get folks who reach out to me and say, like, I'm stuck. Like, I don't know if I want to do podiatric medical school or if I want to do osteopathic or allopathic medical school.
Right.
And what I tell them is a lot of times they'll say, I did shadow a podiatrist, but I don't know if this is what I want. And I'll tell them, shadow a different podiatrist, like keep shadowing different podiatrists, because the thing is the settings are also so different. And that's the nice thing about the profession. You can make of it what you want. Someone can have their practice consist of 100%, clinical patients. Another person can have a practice that's, half clinical, half surgical candidates and things like that. And there's wound care. I mean, there's just so many different, I personally know practitioners who have a majority peds population. So, I tell them, check out a couple different ones, see the potential out there. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be for everyone. If you don't feel like it's for you, then maybe it's not, know.
Right. And that actually leads to, I kind of wanted to flip this question. Are there ever any cases where maybe you've seen students go to podiatry school and maybe they shouldn't have?
I had some friends actually in school who, I can think of one in particular who, a year into it said, this isn't for me. I actually, he was more into research, generally speaking. So that's an example of someone who just medicine in general was not, for him. But, I'm sure there are examples both ways. When I was actually doing my master's at the DO school, I actually ran into a DO student. He was a first year DO student. And when I told him I was interested in podiatric medicine, he kind of looked at me and he was like almost like in regret. He was like, man, I really wish I decided to do that instead. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, the whole reason I went to DO school is because I want to become an orthopedic surgeon. And you got to be top of your class in DO or MD school to end up in orthopedic surgery. And it's also a 5-year postgraduate residency.
Yeah.
And then most of them end up doing a year fellowship afterwards. So that's 6 years, right? With podiatric surgery, you're doing 3 years postgraduate training, and you're, essentially doing foot and ankle surgery. Yes, you're limited in scope. You're not a full scope orthopedic surgeon or anything like that. You're doing foot and ankle surgery.
Right.
But that's still something that he was interested in. He wanted to do surgery. He wanted to work on bones, and that's something that podiatric surgeons do.
Right.
So really, it works both ways. I'm sure there are podiatric medical students that were like, I wanted to do internal medicine. This is not as medical as I wanted it to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think similar to what you said before, I think the important thing is to shadow as much as you can ahead of time and just try to do as much diligence as you can. And if you get on the road and you realize it's not for you, you can always change direction. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but, anything is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that statement 100%.
Okay. So the next thing is, I can't talk about medical school or podiatric medical school without talking about the investment. So it's an investment not only in money, student loan debt is usually involved, but also just your time. So that's a big commitment to make. So for you, Dr. Rami, how did you decide that you were going to make that commitment and that it was the right choice for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it seems like across the board, all medical education is rising in cost. Like MD, DO, podiatry, even other specialties and facets of medicine. Mm-hmm. So really nowadays, the calculus of these prospective students is much different than the calculus of a student that was considering medicine 20, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now back then you're thinking, oh my God, I'm paying $10,000 to eventually make $200 plus a year. That sounds like a good deal. And now you're thinking, I'm about to be $500,000, maybe a little less, $300,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. And I guess I could eventually, maybe in 20 years, catch up and be, no longer in the negative.
Right.
So my calculus honestly goes back to my passion, which is medicine. I've always known that I wanted to do something within the medical field. And that passion overrode kind of the concerns about costs and things like that. And I know for a lot of my colleagues, they definitely say the same. But if you're trying to do medicine for the money, I wouldn't say don't, look into it. Obviously, you should have a passion for medicine, because at some point you're going to be on call. It's going to be very late at night. Mm-hmm. And even as a student, you're going to be working long hours, and you're going to sit there and you're going to ask yourself, was this all worth it? Is this something that I wanted to do? And, if you can look back and say, you know what, I made a difference in a couple of people's lives, it absolutely is worth it.
Right.
Then you're in good shape. But, if all you did it was for the money, then you're probably going to, regret doing it. So that's how I factored things in cost wise. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that, burnout is real just anyways, even if you are super passionate. But if you're not passionate and you're just doing it for the paycheck, you've got a long road ahead of you. And B, there are other ways that you can make a large paycheck if that's your, motivating factor. So
absolutely.
Not a decision to take lightly, for sure. What advice would you give to students considering podiatric medical school?
Let's see. I want to offer something that I haven't offered yet,
Yeah.
So a different piece of advice, I guess you could say, that I would offer students considering podiatric medical school is to try to find your place in what you're pursuing. And what I mean by that is, one of the things that attracted me about podiatric medical school and even osteopathic medical school, I always say that if I were to not do podiatric medical school, I'd probably do osteopathic as opposed to allopathic. And the reason I say that is because I like to be a part of a cause.
Okay.
And with osteopathic medical school and podiatric medical school, there's still a lot of progress to be made within the professions themselves. Mm-hmm. And with that potential is opportunity, for you as a potential member to be involved in the profession and make an impact. Mm-hmm. So I always like to tell prospective students that ask me for advice, I always tell them, get involved. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you can do as a first year podiatric medical student is run for the American Podiatric Medical Student Association delegate, national delegate position. Okay. So you'll represent your class at the national level at the House of Delegates, representing all of the students. And you're right in the middle of the action, once you get there, and you can have tangible impact. You're in a body of about 50, 60 students representing a very small field. So change happens pretty rapidly there and pretty tangibly. You can feel it, as opposed to, much larger bodies and associations like that of the AMA and the AMSA.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, leave your mark is my advice.
I like that. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like, and, what were you able to sort of leave a mark, as you said, in your own sort of way?
Yeah, so my experience was amazing. I mean, I got to meet so many wonderful individuals. I got to interact with my fellow colleagues and fellow delegates at all the other schools. So I was able to get insight into the experiences of the students at all the other schools. And what I noticed was, and I say this to a lot of the students that ask me, well, which school should I go to? What I noticed was all schools have very similar problems, but also very similar strengths. So at the end of the day, if you're stuck between school A or school B, you're really going to be the deciding factor to your success. You're going to be, how hard you work and really how much effort you put into it is really what's going to be the biggest contributing factor to how well you do. So my experience was wonderful in terms of camaraderie, but in terms of change and impact. So one of the things that I feel like I was able to make an impact on student work, our delegation took that very seriously, because the numbers for applicants were not where we wanted them to be. And we started to advocate, and travel and talk to different students and start initiatives and things like that, prospective students. And we have been seeing the results of that. We have been seeing an improvement in that realm. So
that's great. Yeah, and something you said there that really resonated with me is about, the student themselves. I mean, you are the one that's going to determine your success. So with choosing a school, I know a lot of students get hung up on, am I going to go to the right school? I need to get into the best school. And really, at the end of the day, my advice always is try to, obviously cost is a factor, but in addition to that, finding a school where you individually can thrive. So some people, that means going to maybe a smaller school. That for others, that might mean going to a larger school. It might mean being on the West Coast versus the East Coast. So there's lots of different factors that go into it. And that's actually something that we do at eQuez is when students come to our website, they can register for free. And we help them based on their preferences for schools, give them a personalized list of schools based on their preferences. Because like you said, all the schools are going to prepare you. It's up to you once you get there. So I really like that. Good.
That sounds great. I mean, I think your initiative is very important. I think it's something that's not really, I mean, you obviously would know this with your market research, but I don't think it's something that's been tackled before, like a service that offers students a personalized choice of schools, catering to their preferences and whatnot.
Yeah, with our platform, we're trying to do two things. Number one, educate students about different careers. So it's also just from the student's perspective, it's taking a step back and saying, okay, what do I want to do with my life? What kind of things am I interested in learning? What kind of job do I want? And that's going to be different for everybody because we all have different interests and strengths and weaknesses. It's also taking that a step further once you kind of figured out, oh, this is for me. How do I get there? What school do I need to go to? Do I even need to go to school? That type of thing. We're really about helping people connect with where their place in the world should be and helping them find that. So we're very excited about it and happy to have you on here. And we're really excited to be talking about podiatry. So,
yeah, thank you. I think you're onto something. Okay. I like what you got going on. Yep.
Good. I like to hear that. I think so too. If you could go back to your very first day of podiatric medical school, what is now in hindsight one piece of advice that you would give to yourself?
Ooh, that's a good one. I guess don't stress out too much. Don't dwell in the uncertainties. Even though, like I said, we specialize from the get-go, there's still the uncertainty of where I'm going to end up in residency and if I'm going to end up in residency. And a lot of times with all your hard work and all the money that you spend on your education and medical school, that really gets to you. You reach a point where you're like, am I even going to land in a residency? Am I even going to end up at a quality program and things like that? And in hindsight, if I spent so much less time stressing out on that, I probably would be in better health right now,
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I definitely could have had that advice in school. If students are interested in getting in touch with you, what is the best way for them to contact you?
The single biggest platform that I get contacted on is Instagram. My tag is just _podiatry.
Okay.
But they're more than welcome to reach out to me via email, and my email is just Rami, Rami, my last name Basatneh, Basatneh @gmail.com. Yeah, so I mean, students usually ask me like, "Oh my God, I don't think I'm gonna get in. This is what my score is," and I'll tell them like, "Hey, like, it's not the end of the world. Here are things that you can do to supplement your application."
Right.
Others, like I said, ask me whether they should even consider it, yada yada, so on and so forth. So people are more than welcome to ask me anything via email.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure students will be reaching out. I appreciate your time. I know this is a late one. You had lots of great information to share, and I agree with you. I think podiatry and podiatric medicine is a really interesting field for students to consider, and we're going to keep doing our best to make sure students are aware of this option.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure, distinct pleasure and honor being here with you, and good luck to you with eQuez. It seems like it's an amazing endeavor. So thanks. I can only see bright things in its future.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to eQuez Audio. To learn more about podiatry and to explore schools, head over to eQuez.com. That's eQuez.com to get personally matched to best fit programs. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe, and we would love for you to rate and review us. Keep in mind that our discussion today mentions views and opinions that are personal in nature and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any university, agency, organization, employer, or company, and should be used at your own discretion. We wish you the best in your quest for education.